Genesis 29. As Jacob continued on his way to the east, he looked out in a field and saw a well where shepherds took their sheep for water. 3 flocks of sheep were lying around the well, which was covered with a large rock. Shepherds would roll the rock away when all their sheep had gathered there. Then, after the sheep had been watered, the shepherds would roll the rock back over the mouth of the well. Jacob asked the shepherds,
"Where are you from?"
"We're from Haran,"
they answered. Then he asked,
"Do you know Nahor's grandson, Laban?"
"Yes, we do."
They replied.
"How is he?"
Jacob asked.
"He's fine.
They answered.
And here comes his daughter Rachel with the sheep."
Jacob told them,
"Look, the sun is still high up in the sky and it's too early to bring in the rest of the flocks. Water your sheep and take them back to the pasture."
But they replied,
"We can't do that until they all get here and the rock has been rolled away from the well."
While Jacob was still talking with the men, his cousin Rachel came up with her father's sheep. When Jacob saw her and his uncle's sheep, he rolled the rock away and watered the sheep. He then kissed Rachel and started crying because he was so happy. He told her that he was the son of her aunt Rebekah, and she ran and told her father about him. As soon as Laban heard the news, he ran out to meet Jacob. He hugged and kissed him and brought him to his home, where Jacob told him everything that had happened. Laban said,
"You are my nephew, and you are like one of my own family."
After Jacob had been there for a month, Laban said to him,
"You shouldn't have to work without pay, just because you are a relative of mine. What do you want me to give you?"
Laban had 2 daughters. Leah was older than Rachel, but her eyes didn't sparkle, while Rachel was beautiful and had a good figure. Since Jacob was in love with Rachel, he answered,
"If you will let me marry Rachel, I'll work 7 years for you."
Laban replied,
"It's better for me to let you marry Rachel than for someone else to have her. So stay and work for me."
Jacob worked 7 years for Laban, but the time seemed like only a few days because he loved Rachel so much. Jacob said to Laban,
"The time is up, and I want to marry Rachel now."
So Laban gave a big feast and invited all their neighbors. But that evening he brought Leah to Jacob, who married her and spent the night with her. Laban also gave Zilpah to Leah as her servant woman. The next morning Jacob found out that he had married Leah, and he asked Laban,
"Why did you do this to me? Didn't I work to get Rachel? Why did you trick me?"
Laban replied,
In our country, the older daughter must get married first. After you spend this week with Leah, you may also marry Rachel. But you will have to work for me another 7 years.
At the end of the week of celebration, Laban let Jacob marry Rachel, and he gave her his servant woman Bilhah. Jacob loved Rachel more than he did Leah, but he had to work another 7 years for Laban. The Lord knew that Jacob loved Rachel more than he did Leah, and so he gave children to Leah but not to Rachel. Leah gave birth to a son and named him Reuben, because she said,
"The Lord has taken away my sorrow. Now my husband will love me more than he does Rachel."
She had a second son and named him Simeon, because she said,
"The Lord has heard that my husband doesn't love me."
When Leah's third son was born, she said,
"Now my husband will hold me close."
So this son was named Levi. She had one more son and named him Judah, because she said,
"I'll praise the Lord."
Genesis 30. Rachel was very jealous of Leah for having children, and she said to Jacob,
"I'll die if you don't give me some children."
But Jacob became upset with Rachel and answered,
"Don't blame me. I'm not God."
"Here, take my servant Bilhah.
Rachel told him.
Have children by her, and I'll let them be born on my knees, to show that they are mine."
Then Rachel let Jacob marry Bilhah, and they had a son. Rachel named him Dan because she said,
"God has answered my prayers. He has judged me and given me a son."
When Bilhah and Jacob had a second son, Rachel said,
"I've struggled hard with my sister, and I've won."
So she named the boy Naphtali. When Leah realized she could not have any more children, she let Jacob marry her servant Zilpah, and they had a son.
I'm really lucky.
Leah said, and she named the boy Gad. When they had another son, Leah exclaimed,
I'm happy now, and all the women will say how happy I am.
So she named him Asher. During the time of the wheat harvest, Reuben found some love flowers and took them to his mother Leah. Rachel asked Leah for some of them, but Leah said,
It's bad enough that you stole my husband. Now you want my son's love flowers too.
All right.
Rachel answered.
Let me have the flowers, and you can sleep with Jacob tonight.
That evening, when Jacob came in from the fields, Leah told him,
You're sleeping with me tonight. I hired you with my son's love flowers.
They slept together that night, and God answered Leah's prayers by giving her a fifth son. Leah shouted,
God has rewarded me for letting Jacob marry my servant.
And she named the boy Issachar. When Leah had another son, she exclaimed,
God has given me a wonderful gift, and my husband will praise me for giving him 6 sons.
So she named the boy Zebulun. Later, Leah had a daughter and named her Dinah. Finally, God remembered Rachel. He answered her prayer by giving her a son.
God has taken away my disgrace.
She said,
I'll name the boy Joseph, and I'll pray that the Lord will give me another son.
After Joseph was born, Jacob said to Laban,
Release me from our agreement and let me return to my own country. You know how hard I've worked for you, so let me take my wives and children and leave.
But Laban told him,
If you really are my friend, stay on, and I'll pay whatever you ask. I'm sure the Lord has blessed me because of you.
Jacob answered,
You've seen how hard I've worked for you, and you know how your flocks and herds have grown under my care. You didn't have much before I came, but the Lord has blessed everything I have ever done for you. Now it's time for me to start looking out for my own family.
How much do you want me to pay you? Laban asked. Then Jacob told him,
I don't want you to pay me anything. Just do one thing, and I'll take care of your sheep and goats. Let me go through your flocks and herds and take the sheep and goats that are either spotted or speckled, and the black lambs. That's all you need to give me. In the future, you can easily find out if I've been honest. Just look and see if my animals are either spotted or speckled, or if the lambs are black. If they aren't, they've been stolen from you.
I agree to that,
was Laban's response. Before the end of the day, Laban had separated his spotted and speckled animals and the black lambs from the others, and had put his sons in charge of them. Then Laban made Jacob keep the rest of the sheep and goats at a distance of 3 days' journey. Jacob cut branches from some poplar trees and from some almond and evergreen trees. He peeled off part of the bark and made the branches look spotted and speckled. Then he put the branches where the sheep and goats would see them while they were drinking from the water trough. The goats mated there in front of the branches, and their young were spotted and speckled. Some of the sheep that Jacob was keeping for Laban were already spotted, and when the others were ready to mate, he made sure that they faced in the direction of the spotted and black ones. In this way, Jacob built up a flock of sheep for himself and did not put them with the other sheep. When the stronger sheep were mating near the drinking place, Jacob made sure that the spotted branches were there. But he would not put out the branches when the weaker animals were mating. So Jacob got all of the healthy animals, and Laban got what was left. Jacob soon became rich and successful. He owned many sheep, goats, camels, and donkeys, as well as a lot of slaves. Genesis 31. Jacob heard that Laban's sons were complaining.
Jacob is now a rich man, and he got everything he owns from our father.
Jacob also noticed that Laban was not as friendly as he had been before. One day the Lord said,
Jacob, go back to your relatives in the land of your ancestors, and I will bless you.
Jacob sent for Rachel and Leah to meet him in the field where he kept his sheep, and he told them,
Your father isn't as friendly with me as he used to be, but the God my ancestors worshipped has been on my side. You know that I have worked hard for your father, and that he keeps cheating me by changing my wages time after time. But God has protected me. When your father said the speckled sheep would be my wages, all of them were speckled. And when he said the spotted ones would be mine, all of them were spotted. That's how God has taken sheep and goats from your father and given them to me. Once, when the flocks were mating, I dreamt that all the rams were either spotted or speckled. Then God's angel called me by name. I answered, and he said, "Notice that all the rams are either spotted or speckled. I know everything Laban is doing to you, and I am the God you worshipped at Bethel when you poured olive oil on a rock and made a promise to me. Leave here right away and return to the land where you were born."
Rachel and Leah said to Jacob,
There's nothing left for us to inherit from our father. He treats us like foreigners, and has even cheated us out of the bride price that should have been ours.
Now do whatever God tells you to do. Even the property God took from our father and gave to you really belongs to us and our children.
Then Jacob, his wives, and his children got on camels and left for the home of his father Isaac in Canaan. Jacob took all of the flocks, herds, and other property that he had gotten in northern Syria. Before Rachel left, she stole the household idols while Laban was out shearing his sheep. Jacob tricked Laban the Aramean by not saying that he intended to leave. When Jacob crossed the Euphrates River and headed for the hill country of Gilead, he took with him everything he owned. 3 days later, Laban found out that Jacob had gone. So he took some of his relatives along and chased after Jacob for 7 days before catching up with him in the hill country of Gilead. But God appeared to Laban in a dream that night and warned,
Don't say a word to Jacob. Don't make a threat or a promise.
Jacob had set up camp in the hill country of Gilead when Laban and his relatives came and set up camp in another part of the hill country. Laban went to Jacob and said,
Look, what you've done. You've tricked me and run off with my daughters like a kidnapper. Why did you sneak away without telling me? I would have given you a going-away party with singing and with music on tambourines and harps. You didn't even give me a chance to kiss my own grandchildren and daughters goodbye. That was really foolish. I could easily hurt you, but the God your father worshipped has warned me not to make any threats or promises. I can understand why you were eager to return to your father, but why did you have to steal my idols?
Jacob answered,
I left secretly because I was afraid you would take your daughters from me by force. If you find that any one of us has taken your idols, I'll have that person killed. Let your relatives be witnesses. Show me what belongs to you and you can take it back.
Jacob did not realize that Rachel had stolen the household idols. Laban searched the tents of Jacob, Leah, and the 2 servant women, but did not find the idols. Then he started for Rachel's tent. She had already hidden them in the cushion she used as a saddle and was sitting on it. Laban searched everywhere and did not find them. Rachel said,
Father, please don't be angry with me for not getting up. I'm having my period.
Laban kept on searching, but still did not find the idols. Jacob became very angry and said to Laban,
What have I done wrong? Have I committed some crime? Is that why you hunted me down? After searching through everything I have, did you find anything of yours? If so, put it here where your relatives and mine can see it. Then we can decide what to do. In all the 20 years that I've worked for you, not one of your sheep or goats has had a miscarriage, and I've never eaten even one of your rams. If a wild animal killed one of your sheep or goats, I paid for it myself. In fact, you demanded the full price, whether the animal was killed during the day or at night. I sweated every day, and I couldn't sleep at night because of the cold. I had to work 14 of these 20 long years to earn your 2 daughters, and another 6 years to buy your sheep and goats. During that time, you kept changing my wages. If the fearsome God worshipped by Abraham and my father Isaac had not been on my side, you would have sent me away without a thing. But God saw my hard work, and he knew the trouble I was in, so he helped me. Then, last night, he told you how wrong you were."
Laban said to Jacob,
"Leah and Rachel are my daughters, and their children belong to me. All these sheep you are taking are really mine, too. In fact, everything you have belongs to me. But there is nothing I can do to keep my daughters and their children. So I am ready to make an agreement with you, and we will pile up some large rocks here to remind us of the agreement."
After Jacob had set up a large rock, he told his men to get some more rocks and pile them up next to it. Then Jacob and Laban ate a meal together beside the rocks. Laban named the pile of rocks Jegar-Sahadutha, but Jacob named it Galeed. Laban said to Jacob,
"This pile of rocks will remind us of our agreement."
That's why the place was named Galeed. Laban also said,
"This pile of rocks means that the Lord will watch us both while we are apart from each other."
So the place was also named Mizpah. Then Laban said,
"If you mistreat my daughters or marry other women, I may not know about it, but remember, God is watching us. Both this pile of rocks and this large rock have been set up between us as a reminder. I must never go beyond them to attack you, and you must never go beyond them to attack me. My father Nahor, your grandfather Abraham, and their ancestors all worship the same God, and he will make sure that we each keep the agreement."
Then Jacob made a promise in the name of the fearsome God his father Isaac had worshipped. Jacob killed an animal and offered it as a sacrifice there on the mountain, and he invited his men to eat with him. After the meal, they spent the night on the mountain. Early the next morning, Laban kissed his daughters and his grandchildren goodbye, then he left to go back home.